Hello guys, gals and non-binary pals, welcome back to Budget Brew. Today we're going to do Skrelv Defector Mite. So this little critter is 1 white for a 1/1 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexia Mite with Toxic 1. Skrelv Defector Mite can't block, and for Phyrexia White we can tap and choose a colour. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that colour until end of turn, and it can't be blocked by creatures of that colour this turn. So the deck is going to be, basically we're going to try and get through with a lot of Toxic, and trying to get it through with Skrelv's ability and protect our creatures with that ability as well. Before we go into the deck, it would really mean a lot if you could subscribe if you like the content, and you get notifications of more deck techs coming up and some live commander games that we do. Also, the Discord link's in the description if you'd like to join us for some chats. We're also sponsored by Pinfinity, the augmented reality pins. Just use the code LOTUS for 20% off, and the proceeds can support the channel, so it'll be much appreciated. But let's start off with the ramp section of the deck. White is a difficult place to start, so we have Commander Sphere, which is 3 mana to add 1 of any colour, but we could sack it for a card draw later. Knight of the White Orchid could help us catch up with our opponents, so we not exactly ramp, more keep up with the rampies. Marble Diamond is a mana rock that does enter tapped, but on a budget we do what we can. Mindstone is 2 mana for a colourless mana rock, but again can draw us a card later in the game when needed. Monument to Perfection is a 2 mana artifact where we pay 3 and tap it. We search the library for a basic, a sphere, or a lotus card. Reveal it and put it into our hand. There are 2 cards we're coming up at the end of thing that can actually get this, bar the basic. And even if you just need to grab a land because you're running a bit short, I think this is a very budget version of, say, land tax. Not as good, but it can fill that spot. Mere Convert is a mana dork that pays 2 life to add 1 of any colour, but it also has Toxic 1. Phyrexian Atlas is a 3 mana artifact that taps for 1 mana of any colour. However, if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, they lose a life when we tap it. And Solemn Simulacrum, 4 mana 2/2. When it enters, we search for a basic land card, and we put that onto the battlefield tapped, but when it dies, we can draw a card. And talking of drawing cards, we need to draw as many as we can, and in white, that can be a little bit of a tricky situation, but Court of Grace is 2 white for an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch. At the beginning of our upkeep, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. If we're the Monarch, we make a 4/4 angel with flying instead. And obviously the Monarch, you draw a card at the end of your turn if you're the Monarch. Glimmer Lens, 1 white for Mirrodin, enters attached to a 2/2 rebel creature token. But whenever a crit creature and at least 1 other creature attack, we draw a card. Mentor of the Meek is a old favourite. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, we may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. We're going to be making a lot of tokens, and most of them are going to be small. Norn's Wellspring is 1 white. Whenever a creature you control dies, scry 1, and then put an oil counter on this. 1 and tap, remove 2 oil counters to draw a card. We also have Platoon Dispenser, 5 mana for a 4/6 construct that at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. And to help us with that, for 3 white, we can make a 1/1 colourless soldier artifact creature token. Rumour Gatherer has Alliance, which is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. Staff of the Storyteller is 1 white artifact. When Staff of the Storyteller enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Whenever you create one or more creature tokens, put a story counter on Staff of the Storyteller. For white and tap, remove a story counter to draw a card. Tablet of Completion. It's a little bit of a build up for this one, but tap, put an oil counter on it. Tap, add colourless, but only if there's 2 or more oil counters on it, or 1 and tap, draw a card, and only if it has 5 or more oil counters on it. We have Thought to Shop, 3 mana artifact. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. And for 2 and a white, we can tap it to create a 1/1 colourless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Don't forget the mites themselves are also artifact creatures. And Tokasia's Welcome, 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever 1 or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enter the battlefield, under our control, draw a card, but it only triggers once each turn. We need a little bit of removal to stop the tide of big creatures coming at us. Annex Sentry, 2 and a white for a 1/4 with Toxic 1. When it enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until this leaves the battlefield. Charge of the Mites is 2 and a white for an instant where we get to choose one of the following. Charge of the Mites deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker, and we create 2 1/1 colourless Mites. Ossification is 1 and a white for a enchantment aura that enchants a basic land that we control. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Ossification leaves the battlefield. Planar Disruption, 1 and a white for an enchantment aura, enchant artifact creature or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent can't attack, block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. And finally in this section we have Wanderer's Strike, 4 and a white for a sorcery, exile target creature, then proliferate. Need to wipe the board occasionally because it gets a bit messy, so Austere Command is 4 white for a sorcery where we can choose 2 of the following. Destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. Dusk is 2 white for a sorcery, destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, and from the graveyard we can cast Dawn, 3 white, sorcery. Return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. White Sun's Twilight is X white for a sorcery where we can gain X life, but create X 1/1 colourless Mites, and if it's 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. Talking of creatures, this is the meat and potatoes of the deck. We have Apostle of Invasion, 4 white for a flying 4/4, and it has Corrupted. As long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, it has double strike. Don't forget, Skrelv gives something Toxic 1, so smacking with a double striking Toxic 1 soon racks up a lot of poison. Aven Mind Sensor, 2 and a white for a 2/1 flash flying. If an opponent would search the library, that player searches the top 4 cards of their library instead. Slows down players that tutor a lot. Ballistika's Shepherd, 3 white for a flying 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, we make 2 colourless Mites. Crawling Chorus is a 1 mana 1/1 with Toxic 1, that when it dies, it replaces itself with a Mite. Duelist of Deep Faith is a 1 and a white for a Toxic 1 with 2/2. As long as it's our turn, it has First Strike. Fencing Ace is a 1 and a white 1/1 with double strike. Flensing Raptor is 2 and a white for a 2/2. It's a flying Toxic 1, and when it enters the battlefield, another target creature we control with Toxic gets +1/+1 and gains flying till end of turn. Grateful Apparition, 1 and a white for a flying 1/1. When it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, proliferate. Incisor Glider is a 1 and a white for a 1/3 with flying and has Corrupted. Whenever it attacks, if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Indoctrination Attendant, 3 and a white for a Toxic 1/3/4. When it enters the battlefield, we may return another permanent we control to its owner's hand. If you do, we make a Mite. Jawbone Duelist is 1 and a white for a 1/1 double striker with Toxic 1. Again, with Skrelv, Toxic 1 plus their Toxic 1 means we're double striking for 2 lots of Toxic 1 twice, dealing 4 poison counters. Lost Leonin is 1 and a white for a 2/1 with Infect. Martyr for the Cause is 1 and a white for a 2/2 that when it dies, we proliferate. Myrian Crusader is 1 white for a 2/2 double striker, protection from black and from green. Porcelain Zealot is 3 and a white for a 2/3 that at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +1/+1. If that creature has Toxic, instead it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Priests of Norn is 2 and a white for a Vigilant 1/4 with Infect. And we have Sinew Dancer, a single white for a 1/1 that has 3 and a white tap to tap target creature. If an opponent has 3 or more poison counters and is corrupted, it's a single white and tap to tap target creature. And Swooping Lookout, a single white for a 1/2, it has flying and vigilance. We're going to make a few tokens in this deck so we can try and go wide and try and get a few more of those toxic creatures through. Defiler of Faith is 3 white for a 5/5 with vigilance. As an additional cost to cast white permanent spells, we may pay 2 life. Those spells cost white less to cast if life was paid this way. This effect only reduces the amount of white mana, not colourless. And whenever we cast a white permanent spell, we make a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Felidar Retreat for 3 and a white for landfall. As soon as we play a land, we can make a 2/2 cat or put a +1 counter on each creature we control and they gain vigilance until end of turn. Haunted Library is 1 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we can pay 1 colourless. If you do, make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Infested Fleshcutter, 1 and a white for an artifact equipment with equip 2 and a white. The equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, we make a 1/1 Mite. Inquisitorial Rosette is 2 mana for an equipment that has equip 3. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, create a 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature token with vigilance that's attacking, then attacking creatures gain menace until end of turn. Might Overseer is 3 and a white for a 4/2 with first strike. As long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+0 and have first strike, and for 3 and a Phyrexia white, we can make a Might. Rabble Rousing, 4 and a white for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. Whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then if you control 10 or more creatures, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. This just keeps doubling our tokens for every time we keep swinging with them. Skrelv's Hive was one of the most expensive cards in the deck, probably about $6. It keeps going up, so I'd probably get it soon. But it's 1 and a white for an enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colourless Phyrexia Mite. Corrupted, as long as the opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control toxic have lifelink. And Twilight Drover, 2 and a white, 1/1 spirit. Whenever a creature token leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Twilight Drover. For 2 and a white, remove a +1/+1 counter from Twilight Drover and create 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Need a bit of recursion in case we get wrathed. Against all odds is 3 and a white for a sorcery where we can choose one or either. Exile target artifact or creature we control, then return it to the battlefield under our owner's control. Or return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And Sun Titan for 4 white for a 6/6 with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, we may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. To try and stop our things from getting blown up, we have a bit of protection. 8.5 Tails is double white for a 2/2. For 1 and a white, target permanent you control gains protection from white until end of turn, and for a colourless, target spell or permanent becomes white until end of turn. Glory, 3 white for a 3/3 flyer. 2 and a white. Choose a colour. Creatures you control gain protection from the chosen colour until end of turn, but we activate it only if Glory is in our graveyard. Unbreakable Formation, 2 and a white for an instant. Creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. Addendum, if you cast this during your main phase, put a +1 counter on each of those creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Your temple is under attack. 2 and a white for an instant. We get to choose one of the two. Pray for protection. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Or strike a deal. You and target opponent each draw 2 cards. The deck needs a little bit of support to get it going, so we have Contagion Class for 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, we put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. But for 4 and tap, we can proliferate, making those poison counters on our opponents a little more deadly. Duelist Heritage is 2 and a white. Whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike to end of turn. So anything with toxic gains toxic again. Fire Shrieker is 3 mana for an equipment with equip 2. Equipped creature has double strike again if anything has toxic or attacking twice as much. So Toxic 1 is basically a Toxic 2. Throne of Geth is 2 mana for an artifact that has tap, sack an artifact to proliferate. All of the mites that we are making are artifacts, so we can proliferate very quickly and get those poison counters stacked up on our opponents. The mana base is very simple this time. Cast an Arden Veil. For 2 white we can make a human creature token. We have Mirex, which is a sphere, as well as the Fair Basilica. These were the 2 cards other than the basic planes that we could have got with the Monument. The Sphere, for 3 and tap, is create a 1/1 colourless Phyrexia Mite. So we can get this and start pumping our mites with our lands. The Fair Basilica is 1 and a white, tap, sacrifice it, and we can draw a card. Otherwise, we run 33 planes. This is a budget brew, so you can add more versatility into the mana base, but there's only so much we can fit in. Here is the deck list. As you can see, the basic lands don't count towards the total of $32.04 TCG market price. The most expensive cards in the deck are Skrelv and Skrelv's Hive. Otherwise, the deck is reasonably priced, as you can see. Otherwise, it'd be nice to see how you would build the deck. What would you add? What would you take away? What did you think didn't work, or what would you think would work on a budget? And also, if you're not building it on a budget, how would you build it? I'd love to hear from you. And again, if you got to the end, please subscribe. Take care.